Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, life as a Muslim in Hawaii. Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Mahealani Richardson. In Hawaii, we pride ourselves on the diversity of our different cultures, ethnicities, and faiths. Perhaps that's why nearly 5,000 Muslims from 42 different countries have decided to call Hawaii home. Being a Muslim in a non-Muslim country isn't easy, and stereotypes and fears may follow those followers of Islam. So what is life like to be a Muslim in Hawaii? We'll examine that tonight. We always like to hear from viewers like you, so share with us your questions and comments about tonight's show by calling 973-1000 if you're on Oahu or 800-238-4847 if you're calling from a neighbor island. You can also watch Insight streamed live on pbshawaii.org. Just click on the title of tonight's show or find us on Twitter at PBS Hawaii. Now on to our guests. Hakeem Wansafi is a longtime Hawaii resident who chairs the Muslim Association of Hawaii and over the years has fielded many questions from news agencies and the community about Muslim beliefs and activities. He's employed as the executive director of the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. Born in Marrakesh, Morocco, Mr. Wansafi moved to the United States 30 years ago and settled here in the islands. Esma Arslan is a first-generation American and Muslim. Her family is from Turkey. Ms. Arslan was born in Pennsylvania and moved with her family to Hawaii 11 years ago. She's currently an undergraduate studying pre-med at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She observes Muslim practice in wearing the Islamic garment known as the hijab. Jay Sakashita is Associate Professor of Religion at the Leeward Community College and a lecturer at the University of Hawaii. His research has been published in newspapers, magazines, journals, and books. He also writes a column about religion for Midweek. And Chad Dunlap, born and raised in California, is stationed in Hawaii with the U.S. Coast Guard and is a college student studying religion and electrical engineering. While he was stationed in the Middle East, he began studying the Islamic religion and converted in 2013. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Great topic.
Thank you.
Hakeem, why don't I start off with you? And Muslims in Hawaii have a really interesting history. How did it all begin here in the islands?
I think it began with the trade. A long time ago in the 1800s, we tracked down the very first family that came to Hawaii. And since then, I think just like the Chinese and others, the migration brought us here through trades and through business and through other things. A little bit more than 40 different countries represented in community now, coming from all different areas and different colors and different shapes and different traditions, but we all migrated and we all here. In addition, there are American-born who converted and call Hawaii home, and some Hawaiians as well that call Islam as their faith.
The Muslim community, 0.5% of the entire population. I mean, it is a minority amongst minorities.
In Hawaii, definitely,
yeah.
Yes, for sure. We're a small group of about 5,000 people, very low-key. We just do what we have to do, worship as we like to worship, and be contributing members of the community.
Esma, talking about a minority in a sea of minorities, when you were a student at Iolani School, talk about that and how you came to the school and what life was like back then.
So I applied to Iolani among other private schools, and when I had applied, I was not wearing a headscarf. I was younger at the time. And I got accepted, and that summer, my transition from 6th grade to 7th grade, I decided to start wearing a headscarf. And so I came to school, and they weren't really expecting it, but they were very welcoming with open arms. And I'm fairly certain I was the first hijabi at the school. So definitely a new experience for them as well as for me. I was a minority, but I didn't feel it. I felt very at home. I felt very welcomed. I felt very respected. Yeah.
You must have received a lot of questions from students or maybe even teachers, because for Iolani is an international school, so there's a lot of international students there. But for the population of students who were just born and raised here, there must have been really no experience with Muslims or people who are of the Islamic faith.
Right. I was surprised actually at how many people didn't know what a Muslim even was. And a lot of my classmates told me later that you're the first Muslim we've ever met. And it was surprising to me because I was born on the mainland and I come from places where there are lots of Muslims. So that was interesting. I did get a lot of questions. I started Iolani in 7th grade, and you know, boys are curious and they're talkative, and they ask me a lot of questions, you know, do you have hair, or you know.
What was a common misconception?
A common misconception was that if I didn't perform well at school, there would be consequences at home, which was quite the opposite. My parents were one of the most relaxed people when it came to my grades. You know, they really left it up to me. So my classmates were quite surprised. They thought that, you know, the household was more punishment-based,
more strict,
I guess.
Yeah.
But my family is wonderful, and that's not the case.
Were there questions about your headscarf and what it really meant?
Yes, why I was wearing it was one of the biggest ones, especially from girls. You know, why do you wear it? What's the purpose? And I would always say the purpose was modesty, and I don't believe there's anything wrong with being more modest. And in Hawaii, you know, we dress very casually. And I think that was surprising for them. But, and you know, about if wearing the headscarf makes me feel oppressed, or if it's a symbol, what kind of symbol is it in the religion? And to me, it's a symbol of freedom, actually. It empowers me to be who I am, and it protects my identity as a Muslim. And it's never made me feel weaker. It's always made me feel stronger.
Professor, you have obviously studied many religions, and you've been to many different religious areas.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Been to many different religious areas, different types.
So, you know, you've been to the mosque, you've been to churches, and that sort of thing.
Right. I've attended different places, mosques, synagogues, temples, shrines, and I feel comfortable in different places. And what I try to tell students is that religion is not the cause of good or bad, but is a reflection. And if you visit the different places, mosques, shrines, temples, synagogues, you'll see that there are good people everywhere. And in every religion, you can also find people that are less than good. But the religion itself doesn't cause that. It reflects that. So if a person is already good, the religion that they practice will reflect that. If there is a person who is intolerant, corrupt, they'll be drawn to the kind of religion that will reflect that. So the religion itself doesn't cause the corruption or the violence.
If you could just take I know you've asked your students this, but if you could break down Islam into just a few words, how would you break that down, let's say, compared to other religions?
Well, the assignment I gave my students this semester is every student has to visit 5 different places of worship, and at each place come up with 5 words to describe the religion. So if I tell you, I'll be giving them A's. But the 5 that I would choose for Islam, one is Allah. Second would be the oneness of God, or I think it's pronounced as Tawheed. Is that correct? And then Sharia, which I think means path.
Okay.
And the idea is that, and a fourth would be obedience, or the willingness to follow, which is why when Muslims pray, they will go down. And you want to follow this path that will lead to God. And then the fifth, which it's not necessarily unique to Islam, but the word Islam is related to the word for peace. And so the idea is that if you follow this path and you're not tempted to go astray, then the end result should be peace.
Chad, talk about your path. You have a really interesting one. You were not really religious, but you felt that there was some sort of higher being growing up.
Yeah, so I felt like I always knew there was God. There was something, higher than. I always knew God was there. I started reading the Bible, and before I was stationed in Bahrain, I was reading maybe halfway through the Bible, and then I came upon like Islam. I never even heard of it in my life, and I came upon Muslims and how they treated me and how they, just accepted me everywhere. They invited me in. They would give me coffee and tea. Like I remember one time I was in the souk, and these people I didn't even know, they invited me in. I was there for 4 hours, we were just having tea, just kind of, having a good time. And I really respected the good manners that they had. So when I seen how they worshipped and how they prayed, I was like really intrigued by it. So I had a copy of the Quran in English, and as soon as I got to Hawaii, about maybe 5 months, 6 months, that's when I started reading the Quran, and I finished it in a month and a half. And after I read it, the emotions that I felt, up and down, and, the questions that I always asked, like in life, they were answered in the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
And everything about it.
What were the questions that you're asking in life?
Like before, like what happens when you die, how you're supposed to treat your parents, how you're supposed to live your life, how you should, just act with people. You're supposed to be good to your neighbor. You're supposed to be truthful. You're supposed to have, honesty is very key, in Islam. And I really was drawn to these qualities, and I believed in every one of them. And there wasn't anything that I found after reading the Quran that was false or anything that I thought, I was scared of or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I decided, that I was going to become a Muslim.
And what kind of process in terms of converting did you have to go through?
Well, there's not really a process. You have to believe. Once you believe that God is there and He is, that's who you want to worship, and that Islam is the religion you want to follow, then first I wanted to talk to my family, and my family was accepting 100%. Mm-hmm. They were wonderful. And so then you just say the Shahada, and it's from your heart. You don't really have to say it to anyone. Like for me, I was in my own house and I said it. So I was by myself for about a month, where I was just following the faith how I thought it was.
And so your family was accepting, and friends and others of those around you?
Yeah, I was blessed with that. Good family, they accepted it 100%. They were great, and they didn't even blink an eye. And friends, yeah, they were very accepting as well. They took me in, and they were just like, yeah, that's okay, that's your choice. Mm-hmm. They all, they were really nice.
That's a great story. And
yeah.
Was there any trepidation? That wondering, I'm going to make this choice. Will people still accept me? Did you ever worry
have that
about
a little bit, yeah, because you wonder like, oh, are people going to think this? Like, what are people going to think about me? When I become Muslim, or what are people going to be mean to me, or is it like my family going to turn away? Mm-hmm. But then I remembered that the only reason I wanted to become Muslim was, I believed that the Quran was the truth, and I believed that I wanted to worship God, and. I figured if I was just truthful and just 100% honest with people, they would accept me for who I was.
And like Esma, you must have gotten some questions too from people who didn't know much about it.
Yeah, they would ask me, and I'm like, I'm still new myself.
What did they ask you?
Well, they would ask me like, well, why do you want to become Muslim? I was like, well, I believe in this and this, and I would tell them. And they're like, oh, okay, once they seen my points, they really liked it.
Right.
And they were like, okay, we see your points.
Hakeem, Chad's story is a very common one in the military, isn't it?
It is. More than half of the people that convert to Islam, in our community anyway, they come from the military background somehow. Mm-hmm. And I think curiosity, there is a lot of bad press out there. There is a lot of negative news that people see. And if that's the only thing you're looking at, you tend to start associating Islam with some really terrible things that may be happening there. And when the people start being that curious and start studying it, really not relying on propaganda and others, then they start seeing what the religion for itself. Mm-hmm. Van Dart, one of the sharpest critics of Islam, the one who made that movie, The Fatwa, which is mm-hmm. horrible about Islam and Muslims, and he converted to Islam, and I think one of the questions was, why did you convert? And he was a staunch enemy of Islam and propagating that information. He just admitted there was just a little bit of ignorance and just led him to that path. And when he started really looking at it objectively and studying it, he found that the fear and a lot of information that he gotten was wrong, and he changed his path.
Talk about some of the converts to Islam, and you know, kind of break down the numbers. You have a very large military population. What are some of the others? A lot of women as well?
There is. I think Hawaii tends to follow the trend of the world, actually, being Islam is the fastest growing religion and keeps on growing. Estimated in 2050, 1 out of every 3 individuals will be a Muslim. The trend is also the conversion from women as compared to men is about 4 to 1, which tends to dispel the myth of oppression. These are folks that actually study the religion and then they make a conscious decision that this is the religion that I want to call my own faith. And the similarities are tremendous. There is very few differences that people tend to concentrate on, but the beauty here in Hawaii is that we celebrate our differences. We look at them as a strength, not a weakness, and I think that's why there isn't a lot of issues here that you will see in the mainland and other countries.
Professor, I mean, you've been to, you said earlier, you've been to the mosque, you've prayed in a church, you've prayed in a synagogue, and you're not necessarily, you don't belong to one particular religion.
It depends on the season.
It depends on the season.
So December I become more Christian.
Interesting.
Summer I become more Buddhist.
Do you have a preference for one?
Well, I'm most comfortable with Christianity and Buddhism because my parents, my dad was raised in a Buddhist tradition, and my mom is Episcopalian. So I'm most familiar with Buddhism and Christianity. And it's being familiar with Christianity especially has helped me when I've studied Islam. I'd like to just say something about the reasons, part of the reasons why Islam grows so rapidly. The 2 largest religions in the world, Christianity and Islam. And part of the reason is because both religions are exclusivistic. So in other words, if you convert to Christianity, the other religion is losing a member. You cannot be both Christian and Buddhist, for example. And the same is with Islam. So if you convert to Islam, you can only be Muslim. And it might be different here in Hawaii, but from what I understand, so for example, if you are Muslim, if you are a Muslim woman, you can only marry a Muslim man. And if you're a Muslim man, you can only marry someone who believes in the same God. And so again, when you convert, you can only marry basically within, and so the religion grows sometimes at the expense of other religions. This is part of the reason why Christianity and Islam has spread also.
Someone from Honolulu wanted to know, do Muslims and Christians worship the same God?
In theory, they do. The big difference, though, is that Christians believe that Jesus is God, where in Islam, Jesus is the Messiah, but he's not divine. There's just one God. And so God does not have a son. There is no Trinity in Islam. But Muslims respect Jesus. Jesus is in the Quran. Jesus speaks in the Quran. And if I'm not mistaken, Jesus says that he did not tell followers to worship him, but to worship the one true God, Allah. So they both respect Jesus.
You know, the topic of Islam has really come to play, if you say, let's say after 9/11. And how has life changed for you, Hakeem, since 9/11 here in the islands?
It's been, after the moments of 9/11, it was very difficult. For the simple reason, a lot of people didn't know much about Islam. And should they believe what they see, do these terrorists actually represent Islam and the faith? And now, actually, I think the times are more difficult now than they were after 9/11 because of ISIS. And what we kept saying to the folks, just because they call themselves an Islamic state, then in fact they're a death cult. They're neither Islamic nor a state. And try to compare it to North Korea. The true name of North Korea, the legal name is Democratic People's Republic of Korea, but they're not democratic. So just because you have a name and all of that. So it's been very difficult, but here in Hawaii was a lot less. I think the multicultural, there is not one majority of anything, everybody is minority, but also the fact that the Japanese American in Hawaii went through a tragedy of encampment. They were very conscious of it, and I think JACL was the first group who reached out to us right after 9/11, that we're with you and supporting you, and sent some people to the mosque. So I think we benefited from the unfortunate circumstances that they went through. But in general, if you are a Muslim, the best place to live will be Hawaii.
That's great news.
It is great news for everyone. And I think it just speaks for the true sense of aloha that we feel as Muslims, because we live it and we see others reciprocating that.
You know, in the past, you've talked about being racially profiled. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and I think it's still there. In the past, when I used to come here, to come back, this is my home. I mean, I've been here for 30 years and a citizen of this country for over 25 years. So after 9/11 a little bit, then you come and you take your U.S. passport, and we see others. Actually, people that worked for me, they just flag welcome home, and then your passport is put in a red jacket, and you go through the next screening and all of that. But that seems to, for some reason, it's not as bad as it used to be. Maybe I'm just getting older. I'm not a threat anymore.
So at the airport, you had some issues.
At the airport, and then we have sisters that they may hear a word here and there, go back to your country. Like somebody said to my wife, go back to your country, and she's from Vermont, and she just smiled. She said, do you mean my state, or do you mean my country? Those kind of things. But it does exist. It's still there, but in Hawaii, it's not as prominent.
Mary from Hilo, Chad, and I'll direct this at you.
Okay.
How do you feel about the stereotype that Islam is violent?
If it was violent, I probably would not have came to Islam. You know, from the Quran, if you actually read it and you actually follow the faith, you know, there is nothing that is violent about it. You know, you can't take, you know, pieces of the Quran and just throw away other pieces of it. So to say that that it would be violent, you know, you're throwing away part of the Quran. You know, where's the other parts? You know, you can't just take pieces of the Quran and say that, you know, you follow the religion like that. It doesn't work that way.
Sai from Kona said, one of the panelists, and I believe it's you, Professor, said that Islam means peace. I was told that Islam means submission. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when Muslims greet each other, they say as-salam, and that's related to the Hebrew word shalom. And the root of both words, SLM, is peace. And the idea is that when you follow something, so the example I like to give my students is sort of like a recipe. If you follow the instructions, something nice comes out at the end. So when you follow the path, then something nice comes out at the end. So both. When you submit your will to God, then at the end there's something nice, there's peace.
As an Arabic speaker, silm does mean exactly that. It means peace and all of that. And 113 chapters out of 114 of the Quran starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Although war is allowed in Islam under limited circumstances, there are some people who may go outside that limit that it's allowed, but it is full of love, compassion, mercy.
You know, before the show started, we were talking about how most Muslims read the Quran, but probably most Christians don't read the entire Bible. and all of you have read the entire Quran, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What are the parts about it that?
But I took a long time. I'm not as smart.
You're not a speed reader like Chad?
I took a year and a half.
Wow. Esma, what are the parts about the Quran that really speak to you?
Like Hakeem was saying, how every chapter starts with Bismillah, which is the name of God and the most compassionate, the most merciful. And that's really like what I try to embody on a day-to-day basis, compassion and mercy. And when people say things to you that you don't want to hear, or they say things out of ignorance or even hatred, you should always respond with compassion and mercy. And I always try to understand the other person's perspective. That's what this religion has taught me. Patience, for sure, and not to lash out in return, you know. You can definitely yell back, and you can hurt their feelings as well, but that doesn't teach them anything either. You know, you want them to go away with the feeling that that person didn't react to me the way I thought they were going to, and that's kind of what I try to do. And I like how specific the Quran is. From a religious perspective, it's really a way of life, actually. It's not just you go to the mosque and you pray for 5 minutes and then you're done with that part of your faith. It's all throughout the minutes of your day. And that's why I wear a headscarf. You know, it reminds you constantly throughout your day. And people see this visual, right? It's very visual. We're a very visually driven society, which is why I think wearing the hijab is so important, to stand out and to claim your religion. So the specificity, just there's so much in it. I don't know where to start.
We could have the whole show about that. You know, have there ever been any, let's say, negative encounters for you as a Muslim woman in Hawaii?
I have had several, very limited and not extremely negative compared to what I hear from other Muslim sisters on the mainland. It's nowhere in comparison. But I have had people say either things out of ignorance or people who just, you know, they don't care. They'll just say anything to get attention or just to hurt your feelings. I was raised in a very protective environment. Iolani was a wonderful, safe haven for me. It wasn't until after I left high school that I guess was exposed to the real world, and I had some of these encounters, and like people telling me to go back to my home. And I'm born and raised in the United States. This is my home. There is nowhere to go to, actually. I am Turkish and I have family in Turkey, and I love visiting them, but this is my home, and I'm educated in this country, and I vote in this country, and I work in this country, and they'll say, you know, other things like, you know, terrorists. That's always the word that comes out, and
that's gotta hurt. Or does it make you mad when people associate?
It actually just makes me sad. I don't get angry, but I'm sad that you know, this wonderful religion, that's what it's associated with. And I had a friend, and her mother I was talking to her about this, and I would say, you know, someone called me a terrorist, and she said, you need to correct them. You need to say tourist, not terrorist, you know, and just...
This was someone in the street in Hawaii?
Yeah, it usually just happens when you're walking on the road. I think I was in front of Walmart or something.
And someone called you a terrorist?
Yes, and you know, like other things that I can't say. But you also kind of grow desensitized to it, which in itself may not be a good thing, because you keep hearing it and it's like, oh, you don't care anymore. But we should care, and we don't want to be associated with violence or terrorism, and especially with ISIS. I mean, it's just so far from the religion, and people ask me, you know, ISIS says they're Muslim, and I'm saying I don't believe it. I don't accept it. I would never accept these people as brothers and sisters in my religion. I would not pray with these people. I would not go to mosque with these people. And you see the atrocities that like they commit, and it's like people tell us like that there's fear of Muslims. I mean, I'm scared of ISIS too. That is a fear instilling organization. Everyone should be afraid. It's not that Muslims feel safe from them, and a lot of their victims are Muslim, which people don't realize, and they don't consider that fact. Why is a Muslim state killing other Muslims? It doesn't even make sense. And like I said, we just don't want any association with them at all. I mean, I don't believe it, like I said.
Well, tonight we're discussing what life is like as a Muslim in Hawaii. We'd love to hear from you, so please call, email, or tweet your questions and comments. Call 973-1000 or 800-238-4847 if you're calling from a neighbor island. Hakeem, we just heard from Esma that she has been called a terrorist on the streets of Honolulu. Has that ever happened to you?
You know, somebody mentions the word terrorist, I usually just say, nice to meet you, and my name is Hakeem, by the way. It is more of a sadness than to hear something like that. Because here, for example, ISIS, CIA said that there is about between 20 and 30,000 of them, and let's just say double that. That's still only 0.002%. And the folks will take the other 99.9998% and put them all in one pocket. It's more than 1.5 billion Muslims out there. And the folks will say, well, that is exactly what religion teaches. It does teach violence, that teaches jihad. That's a big word, you know, it's like jihad, and everybody kills. And I always submit one thing to them, which is that if that was the case, if the religion teach such violence, then our prophet, which the person who taught us the religion, will be the most violent person. But yet, when he came to Mecca victorious, the very first thing that he did is La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. He forgave everyone, even the people that transgress against him. The golden age, 800 to 1600, where Islam dominated the world, Christianity and Judaism thrived. And you see that it's almost like, you know, the folks who say that in the name of Jesus, they believe in the name of Jesus, and in the name of Jesus they gave us the crusade, the Spanish Inquisition, the IRA in Ireland, the Lord's Republic, Freedom Republic in Uganda, or the people who hang black people, and they saying that it's in the name of Jesus. Jesus is certainly innocent of their claim, as is Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And just because somebody utters that and say that he's doing it in the name of anything, it doesn't make it so. It is what you practice. It is what the religion actually teaches.
Have you ever felt threatened because of your faith here in the islands?
I'm more concerned for my community, because by a lot of folks that will do these kind of things are usually cowards. They will pick their victim. It's usually a sister or somebody else. They were not going to come to me. So, but here in Hawaii, I think it's built differently. All of the cases that we hear of somebody saying some bad word or something, we hear back that somebody else said, hey, you don't say that, or those kind of things. So that brings us comfort. But we're very careful, and I think during this election and certain presidential nominees that's making some really severe, difficult, and dangerous statement, that makes it more difficult for us.
You know, I have to ask you about Donald Trump, because you're talking about statements, so go ahead. Your thoughts on Mr. Trump and his words on Muslims in this country.
Well, I used to take it personally until today, when he also attacked the Pope Francis for making that statement. It's ironic that I think Donald Trump and ISIS have one thing in common, and they both believe that Islam is a religion of war and violence, and ISIS execute that belief. And I think Donald Trump provides them with all the material they need for recruitment. His statements are off the chart, and I think they're unbecoming an American that stands for really mercy, compassion, stands for equality and freedom of religion.
Chad, your thoughts on everything that Trump has been saying recently, and how it relates to you living in the islands?
I'm okay. I don't really want to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, Hasim from Oahu says, my wife and I are Muslims, and we appreciate that PBS has put this topic on, and we appreciate that diversity is highlighted. Professor, why don't you talk more about what you're trying to instill in your students?
One word, tolerance. That there's diversity is good, but for many people they turn diversity into division, which then can be problematic. There isn't, you know, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam believe in one God, but there are different interpretations of that one God. And so it's not, you have to be careful when you start saying or asserting that my interpretation is superior to yours. That it's like my parents. My parents have 3 children, and you know we all agree that I'm the favorite. But if you talk to 3 of us, we'll give you 3 different interpretations.
You're going to get in trouble for that.
And who's to say that mine is superior? It may be best for me, but it's important, I tell students, to respect.
We have a question from Chris from Fort Shafter. Is it true that it's okay to use physical force to discipline a wife in Islam? Esma, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I don't believe in using force to discipline a wife, and that is certainly not the job of the husband. Your actions as an individual and as a member of the religion are all on your shoulders. Every word that you say, every action that you commit, the people that you interact with, you will be held accountable for your actions. There's no one else to give the blame to. And I've never seen this practiced. It seems to be a common belief that men beat their wives. I've been to Turkey. I know lots of Muslim families. It's a Muslim country. And I know there are incidents of domestic violence, as there are with all religions and all non-religious people as well. But I have not met any practicing Muslims that have ever openly declared that, oh, this is something that we should be doing. Oh, you are allowed to beat your wife. I have never heard such a thing. And I don't believe it goes in the Quran that men should, or husbands should beat their wives.
Mm-hmm.
That's.
You know, it's interesting. We have a lot of questions about just the religion itself. Mm-hmm. And Chad, I'm going to ask you this, and if you don't know, that's okay, and maybe we can ask the professor. George from Waikiki asks, is there punishment in Islam for being homosexual?
I'm going to let him go.
Go ahead, Professor. Or Hakeem.
No, it's fine. I mean, in Islam, we believe in one relationship, and that is between a husband and a wife. Even the relationship between a boyfriend and girlfriend is not accepted, and all of that. But also, there is a chapter in the Quran that clearly says that you have your religion and I have mine. So while we do not believe in homosexuality as a religion, we certainly do not punish people for something like that. And as Asma said also, our sources of religion are the Quran and the Sunnah, which is the compilation of the Prophet's explanations. And in the women's case, he said, the best amongst you are the best to their wives. And the Quran says, we have made amongst you mawaddatan wa rahmah, compassion and love. Unfortunately, the culture sometimes mixes with religion, and you find that, and you find these issues. But the only physical or sexual relationship that is allowed in Islam is that between a husband and a wife.
Chad, you know, when you see all these questions, many people just don't know a lot about Islam, period. What do you do to try to educate people? And is it maybe overt, or is it just maybe a topic in conversation when you have when you're with your friends or relatives?
Well, mostly it'll pop up because maybe it's time for prayer or something like that. But I just try to, if someone is curious about it, I will educate them on it, and I'll let them know how Muslims act, what we believe in, the things of the faith that we follow. And I just try to educate them if they want to know, and if sometimes, like my coworkers or something, I will tell them, like, hey, I'm a Muslim, I need to pray, this certain time. So they know that, I just want to be honest with them, so they have a heads up for that.
Clayton from Halava says, why can Muslims preach their faith in the United States, but we can't preach Christianity in Muslim countries? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
That's actually a myth. There is a huge movement of folks preaching all different kinds of religions in all different parts of the world. It's very difficult for a Muslim to become a Christian. I think the success rate is not as big, but there are folks there. And that's why, for example, I was born in Morocco, raised for 20 years there, and we do have churches and we do have synagogues, and so people can choose what they want to practice. But maybe in some closed countries you're not allowed to, but in general people are allowed to practice what they want.
Bob from Pahoa wants to know what each of you are doing to stop extremism. Any thoughts?
You want to start with me? Okay. I guess I have a very routine life. It's very normal to me, and I think a lot of non-Muslim people have the same life that I have. I'm a college student. I, study. I have a job. I work at Queens. And the daily stresses of all of that, and I practice my faith in a way that doesn't offend anybody, doesn't disrespect anybody, and doesn't make anybody else feel uncomfortable, because I never want to feel the same way. I never want anybody else's practices to offend me or disrespect me, and so I will show the same courtesy. And that's just how to avoid extremism. And there is nothing extreme about this religion, to me at least. Of course, you can interpret it in many ways, as people have done, but nothing speaks of extremism to me. And it's your personal relationship with God, with how far you want to go, how much you want to pray, and how dedicated you want to be. But those are all personal things. Those are not things that involve anybody else. And it shouldn't come off as extreme. I don't think, at least my life, I think, is very ordinary. Yeah.
Professor, what is it like for you? Because you're not Muslim, but you have prayed in a mosque before, and there's one mosque in Manoa. Let's see, there's a couple on the neighbor islands as well. What is it like for you?
I have more experience in Singapore. My wife's family's from Singapore. So whenever I go back to Singapore, I will visit a mosque, and I've attended prayer services there. I find that Muslims are just as kind, just as peaceful, just as compassionate as Christians, as Jews, as Buddhists. So again, it goes back to the point where if you are already predisposed towards being tolerant and open-minded, your religion is going to reflect that. If you are narrow-minded, if you are intolerant, if you are discriminatory, your religion is going to reflect that. And so the Quran too, I can just tell by listening to Chad and Asman and Hakeem that they're nice people. But you can also, if we had a different group of people, we could easily pick out the passages in the Quran, which some of your viewers have said, where it does say that if you can't get along with your wife, first you scold her. Then if that doesn't work, you withhold sex. And if that doesn't work, then you strike her, but not on the face. So you can find that. You can also find in the Bible also passages that denigrate women. In 2 Timothy 2:11, it says that women have no authority over man. She should be silent, learning submission. So again, I always tell students that whenever somebody quotes the Bible or the Quran, they're telling you more about what's in their heart than what's actually in the Quran. Because you pick and choose.
Yeah. Hakeem, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if I reverse the question and ask the person who questioned, what are you doing about the shooting that happened by a Christian, and what are you doing about to stop such extremism, they're going to look at me kind of funny. What you're talking about? So we usually see that, and we look at it in the same way. We don't recognize anything that just because they calling themselves Islamic for political reason or for whatever reason, that doesn't make them so. And how is the responsibility of Asma, for example, from Hawaii, to go there and tell these people, hey, stop, you're wrong? We are as bigger target actually than the West, and the most amount of victims that happen through these oppressive cults, death cults, they actually happen in the Muslim world. So there's nothing we can do to stop it, but it does not help when a figure or somebody else, a prominent, start giving them validity and giving them some recruitment tools that makes our life even more difficult. But we all in this. Christian, Jews, no religion, all religions, we all in it. We all stand against violence against women. Peru, for example, is the highest, percentage-wise, Peru is the highest of domestic abuse, and that happens to be a Christian. But we don't take that and say, Christianity teaches that, maybe some culture and all of that. Do we have idiots among the 1.5 billion Muslims? I think we have a few of that, but you'll find them everywhere.
You know, one thing about living on an island or in an island population, we tend to meld certain things about our cultures together, different faiths. Has that happened with Islam here in Hawaii specifically? You know, when you talked about when you go back to Morocco, it's a lot different from what you grew up with. You know, just being in an island. Are Hawaii Muslims very unique from other Muslims, let's say, in other parts of the United States?
I would think so, and not just an island, but specifically Hawaii. You know, it's no longer, after 9/11, a friend of mine, Elliot, I'm not going to say his last name, I mean, he just calls, and right after 9/11, he woke me up, he said, hey, bro, did you see the TV? I said, no, I'm sleeping. He said, hey, if you need a place to hide, he's from the Big Island, you can come. I'm like, what the hell is he talking? I'm not supposed to say that. I said, what is he talking about? But that, to me, is the essence of Hawaii. Here is somebody who thought maybe something could happen, and he's offering me that. Or Miss Tanabe from JACL, who came. She's an elderly. She came with her husband. She wants to take turn to protect our mosque. So when you grow up in that environment and you go to another country, you see it from a different perspective. And as they have a Fox News here, well, we have Fox News in Morocco that tells us all the bad things about the Americans and others. It's unfortunate. So different news outlets here are different. Even the same name, let it be Fox or whatever, they're very different there. They tend to cross and give us information. But Hawaii is a melting pot. It's a beautiful place to be.
You know, Esma, with such a small community here, how do you meet other Muslims? I mean, obviously there's Muslim organizations, but you know, just sort of randomly in your life, how do you meet other Muslims?
Usually I'll meet them through the mosque. I'm a teacher at the mosque at the Sunday school, and I meet a lot of people that way. Or if I go to Friday prayer, I actually meet a lot of non-Muslims who are interested, probably a few of your students who come and say, you know, we're here to learn about the religion and just to observe. And they'll be a little nervous, you know, because they don't want to be disrespectful, and I'll kind of just talk them through it and be like, you're totally fine, everything's fine. But usually people approach me because I'm the visible one with the headscarf.
Sure, sure.
And there are a lot of Muslim women who don't wear headscarves, and they'll say, you know, salam to me on the roadway, and then I'll know that's a Muslim, and then, you know, I can start a conversation.
What about you, Chad, in terms of, do you have military colleagues who are also Muslim who grew up with your background?
Yeah, some people, there's a lot of military Muslims in the Hawaii Mosque itself, and we form like a kind of a tight group. You know, we have the military with us, and then we have, you know, that we're Muslims too. And we're all around the same, you know, same age, you know, so we kind of just instantly bond. And even with the people, the members of the mosque as well, like what Hakeem was saying, it's a melting pot. So everyone comes together, you know, and it's kind of a beautiful way how Hawaii in specific, even when people come to visit, like the tourists who come, when they come to the mosque, they're like, we've never seen a place like this. Hawaii really has the aloha spirit inside the masjid here.
So can a non-Muslim go to a mosque?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's when they want to find out information. They can come to the mosque, ask any kind of question they want, and anyone would answer a question for them.
Professor, Sasha from Hawaii Kai wants to know if you could explain Sharia law and its practice.
It's similar to, in Judaism, the Torah. And the idea is that there are teachings or I guess, laws that when you observe them, it keeps you close. So for example, I'm married, and I stood in front, at a church in front of a priest, and I took vows. And so by observing these vows keeps me close with my wife. So even when she's not on the island, by observing these vows, it brings me close. So Sharia works this way, that by observing the laws, that brings you close to God, that you are following the will of God. And the word Sharia, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it means path. And it originally was a path to a well. And so, it gives you nourishment, it gives you strength by following this path. And so, different Muslims may disagree on the details of the law, or to what extent do you interpret it literally, symbolically, but I think the idea is the same, that by observing the laws or the vows, it brings you closer to God.
Hakeem, because the population is so small here in Hawaii, do you ever feel that you wish there were just more Muslims? I mean, you've got to know everybody in the community. Maybe not everybody, but it's here in Hawaii. We feel like we know everybody, but you especially, you must know everybody.
I know a lot of people, and not necessarily Muslims, and all of that. I just feel at home. I really I'm at a certain stage of my life, maybe, that I just look at you as you. Not necessarily a Muslim, because my best friends may not necessarily be Muslims, and all of that. It's really who you feel comfortable with, who you click with. We're not religion who look for more membership. We actually do not. And that's why we don't go and preach and try to do that.
That's interesting, because there are other religions that are trying to gain more numbers.
Well, we believe that religion is between you and God. And we are there to answer your questions. And we're very careful, because we are a firm believer in Islam that you can only become a Muslim if God wants you to. So our obligation is, through our actions and deeds, to showcase what religion is all about. So when she makes a decision not to be upset, I get upset sometimes. She makes a decision, that's in itself a deen al-mu'amala, as the Prophet, peace and blessings, said. He said, religion is the way you deal with people. So do I wish for more Muslims and all that? I wish for more good people in general. If they're Muslims, it's between them and the Creator. If they're Christians, between them and Creator. And I think we have to respect that, understand that, love that, and really celebrate our differences and not make them a cause of division.
What's interesting, Hakeem, is ever since 9/11, you've become kind of the go-to guy for the media and the community for response from the Muslim community. What type of responsibility is that? I mean, not saying that you speak for the entire community, right, but let's say in the world of media, you kind of do speak for the entire community. There must be a tremendous responsibility there.
When 9/11 happened, my wife was actually the person who put me to that, and her belief, as is mine, is to those that God is giving much is expected. So I don't mind to go there and speak my mind on behalf of my religion. Every Muslim is considered an ambassador of Islam, a practicer of Islam, for Islam, with Islam. I was shy. I'm still sometimes shy to talk to
Really?
Because I'm concerned.
Because you're on TV all the time, and you're in news articles all the time.
But I'm always very careful, because unfortunately, if I even make a mistake, innocent mistake, saying a word that I did not mean, it's no longer Hakeem, it's the Muslims now. So it is responsibility. So I'm very careful what I say, and that's why I'm kind of shy when it comes to that. But also my obligation as Muslim is to be able to respond, and if somebody wants to know something, I'm there to
Chad, Hakeem talked about being an ambassador for the religion. How do you feel being an ambassador for the religion?
It is very much so. When we leave the mosque, that is our time to pray when we're at the mosque. And then when we go, when the people see us, if they find out we're Muslim and we're acting like bad or like mean or anything like that, then they're going to know that, oh, well, they're going to think maybe Muslims are bad people. So when we carry ourselves in a manner that is respectable, honest, peaceful, then people will see us and they'll be like, okay, Muslims are, maybe that can be their changing point to maybe have a change from their thought on how Muslims are and how they, like, if they had a bad, if they had a bad idea about them, you know, it would change them. So when we go out, yes, we are ambassadors to everyone because we have a high responsibility to uphold our manners, our everything that we, everyday action that we have.
And Esma, you kind of touched on this earlier. You know, for some people, religion is every Sunday, but for you, it is every single day, every single minute of your life. And so you are an ambassador of Islam.
I hope so. I hope a good one. Yes, I mean, we do pray 5 times a day as well, and that is also another reminder. And when I pray, it's like a calming process. So if you're ever in an argument, or you didn't get along with your parents, or you're upset about something, or you're stressed about something, those prayers are there, and they have specific times throughout the day, just to really ground you once again. And you know, people do meditation like 10 minutes a day to calm themselves and to clear their minds, and that's really what it is, and it brings you closer to God. And it is my every minute. Like I said, I'm very visibly identifiable, but aside from that, it's always in my heart, you know? And I'm always aware of how people see me, and I'm very aware of how my actions and the words that I say will change further how they will see me and how they will see the rest of the Muslims in the world. So like Hakeem was saying, I'm also very careful, and people are inquisitive, they have questions, and I'm extremely welcoming with questions. No question's a bad question. That's what I say.
Well, thank you, Esma, Chad, and Jay, and Hakeem for answering a lot of questions tonight. It's been very enlightening, so thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, on the next Insights, is Kaka'ako's building boom of glass towers and other high-rises right for Hawaii? Who will live there, and will there be a sense of community in this reinvented district? We'll discuss the issue on the next Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Mahialani Richardson. Ahui ho.